Hello and welcome back to the 27th episode of Greek Speaks. Oh my gosh, that is a huge number. This week we were talking about flood myths and their overlap between Mesopotamia and Greece and the Levant and Egypt to some degree. There's also some in China, but I don't think they overlapped until very later, Silk Road era. But yeah, so the Greek story of the flood myth is kind of connected to last week, which is why I wanted to talk about it, and it's about the son of Prometheus, named Deucalion, and his wife Pyrrha. So Zeus decides that all of humanity kind of sucks. This is very similar to how the Judeo-Christian God decides to send the myth to flood. Prometheus, who is still strung up on this rock on the Mount Parnassus, Deucalion goes to visit him at one point, and he tells Deucalion, hey, there's a flood coming, be prepared. And so Deucalion and Pyrrha go into this chest thing, and that's how they survive the days on days and days of flooding. I think it's 9 days in the Greek. It eventually subsides, and Deucalion and Pyrrha get out of the chest and start making sacrifices to Zeus, and Zeus is like, okay, they're cool. If the rest of humanity is descended from them, we probably won't have this problem again. And so Zeus tells them to throw the bones of their mother behind them and repopulate the earth. And so Deucalion is like, what does that even mean, dude? And Pyrrha figures out that he means throw rocks, because of the Mother Earth. So throw rocks behind you. And so they start doing this, and all the rocks that fall behind Deucalion become men, and all the rocks that fall behind Pyrrha become women. So that's the Greek flood myth. It's very similar to Noah's. Other than the whole they didn't bring animals, but it's still the same ideas. There's a flood myth in the Epic of Gilgamesh, and then there's also a flood myth with Egypt, and I know China back in the day flooded pretty regularly, so I know there's just a couple flood myths with China. Well, what's interesting is a flood myth like this very much proves that mythology is based on history, which I firmly believe that mythology is informed by the culture and the historical context. And B, all of these cultures, Levant, Mesopotamia, Greece, Egypt, I think Rome has a flood myth. Rome basically just copy-pasted all of Greek mythology, so yeah, Rome has a flood myth. But, so all of these cultures and all of these ideas are just smashing together, and that's why there's so many similar myths. I just read this book about parallel mythology, and it was really interesting because there's this one section that it was just called 4 stories or something like that. And it talks about how in 4 distinct civilizations there is this myth about an older man and a younger man, and the older man's wife going after the younger man, and the younger man being like, "Oh no, gross, what?" In those words, and the wife getting mad and blaming the younger man, and the younger man getting published. So there's one in Blackfoot Indian has a story, and then there's a story of the 2 brothers in Egypt, and then there's Bellerophon in Greece, and also there's the myth of Joseph and Potiphar, which is brought to life in Andrew Lloyd Webber's musical, which is probably one of the worst musicals I've ever seen. I'm also very biased because my ex-boyfriend was in that show and played Potiphar. My inner demons aside, all of these 4 myths have these continual themes in them, and the author even says, we can't explain the Blackfoot Indian one, but obviously these peoples were interacting and sharing mythology. And very much, there's a bunch of theories on how mythology is formed and this and that and the other thing, and I very much fall into the camp of it's history, it's general human psyche, it's shared experiences, because yeah, we might be from different cultures, but everybody in every culture and every human being on the face of the planet has experienced fear or love or coming of age kind of thing, or wanting to prove yourself. So I think it's more of the shared human experience and I believe also in the Indo-European mythology, where it like sprouted off everything. So like Norse mythology happened, and Greek mythology, and Mesopotamian, which I totally think that is accurate. And I definitely agree with like the proto-science idea. But there are some ideas in the classical and the mythological studies that I don't necessarily agree with. Like Freud, I don't agree a lot with Freud. Because Oedipus doesn't have an Oedipus complex. I should make an episode about Oedipus. Basically, what I'm trying to say is there is proof that different religious groups and different places in the Mediterranean have been interacting and shares these stories. So yes, you have multiple flood myths in different mythologies, and they're probably based on one universal thing that happened. I think I read somewhere that the flood myth of these Mesopotamia and Egypt and Greece and Levant and that whole shebang is probably inspired by the Ice Age melting, all the glacial stuff melting at the end of the Ice Age and all the seas rising. So, that is the end of a very, very weird podcast episode. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to go off on like 6 tangents, but as always, if you have a myth you want me to talk about in particular, please leave it in the comments down below, and I will see you next week.